Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Kuchera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome in, Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are following us on Facebook. I appreciate that very much. We continue to grow as much as we can, obviously different ways, as many ways as we can. So allowing those to join us on the social media networks is a great benefit and opportunity. However, it is a podcast, so we'd love to have you download the podcast if you haven't done so already. You could get that at iTunes. Just type in Real Estate Radio Live if you're on iTunes, Google+, Stitcher, anywhere, or you could just go to our website for that matter, and that's RERL-1617-Andrew. That's RERL-1617-Andrew. Most of you know I've been following the show. It's hard to believe, almost 8 years I've been doing this radio and podcasting, and I want to take an opportunity, as I like to every once in a while, to thank all of you for your dedication, following the show. I get several emails a week. You know, great questions from people about real estate, non-related real estate items. As you know, we do a lot of shows here. We're very diverse in terms of startup companies. Today we're going to talk about Bay Area hiring scene. We got some great shows in store for you, as we always do. So we want to continue providing the value to you, the consumers, on a regular basis. The focus has always been the same for me when I started the show, and that's education and information. So what I mean by that, for those that are just tuning in for the first time or maybe they haven't been following the show, we work really hard at Real Estate Radio Live to provide you, the consumer, with as much information and education as you can so you make wise decisions on your real estate and related matters that we have here on the show. So we'll continue to do that. All right, before I invite my guest in today, just want to let you know the show is brought to you by Bundle Select. Those of you, again, that have been following the show, it's very exciting. We launched Bundle Select last year, and it is a platform that we partner with companies to offer them an online platform for their employees to bundle all their real estate services in one location for a 25% savings and a 100% guaranteed concierge program, which is really exciting. So if you're an employee listening to this podcast, or maybe you're in HR, talent acquisition, check us out, bundleselect.com. I think if you're an employee that wants a benefit like that, Andrew, that's something you want to pass along to your employer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're listening to the podcast, again, go to bundleselect.com. And if you want more information, obviously click on the demonstration button. We'll be able to help you in any way we can. All right. Most of you know, again, we have a diverse, different topics and subjects. And so Andrew's a good friend of mine. And he's been on the show before. I think Jack interviewed you before, right, Andrew? Yeah. So Andrew Gardiner is an expert in hiring, HR services, consulting, in and around the whole area of hiring. Has been doing this for a while. So today we're going to talk about the Bay Area hiring scene. You know, what's going on, some things you should know about if you're trying to get hired, some things you should know about, you know, submitting to certain companies, resumes, and then we're going to talk to Andrew also about kind of take the temp of the Bay Area, what's going on, the competitive nature of it, and then also some of the services he offers and how he helps companies as well. Andrew, welcome back. Good to have you.
Thank you, Joe. It's an honor.
Good to have you. A lot of good information. This guy is a wonderful wealth of resources, let me tell you. So maybe if we get started, you could just give our listeners a little bit about your background and then what you're up to now, and then we'll dive into our topic.
Okay. I think the last time I did the show, I started out with it was a cold and stormy night, but we won't do that.
The fire was brewing, yeah.
By way of introduction, my background, and let's just say for the bulk of my professional career, has been in recruitment, advertising, recruitment, marketing. It's funny, Joe, I've watched the evolution from personnel to HR to recruitment to TA, now talent acquisition. But that's been the bulk of my experience, is working with employers on how to identify, source, hire, and retain the top talent, particularly here in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley.
Very good. Before we jump into this, one of the things just resonated or just thought about as you talked about that. Years ago, HR has taken on a whole new, I don't know what I want to call it now. I guess what I'm trying to say in a diplomatic way, it didn't seem years ago HR was that important or critical to companies. People would, we need HR, and just in case we need HR. But Has that changed? I mean, is HR now one of the most important divisions or department in a company because of how they look at how important it is to attract and keep talent?
Well, it is. It is and it isn't. It's
kind of a unique, isn't it?
I'm never not amazed because, right, it's all about the people. It starts with the people. Right. But to your point, it used to be almost just like a kind of part and parcel. HR is HR, but it became a lot more important and relevant when the hiring market tightens up and things are more competitive. But I'm, again, never not amazed when HR is one of the first, or TA, whatever you want to call it, is the first department or discipline to get cut. And it's like, why would you cut that? Everything starts and ends with HR, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, no, it really does. Well, let's kind of start with talking a little bit about the basics of hiring, because I think, a lot of people are out there, and it's a very competitive market, and people are always kind of keeping one eye open for what's going on, and maybe they want to jump ship or try something different or go on to the next company. What are some of the things that, as people are listening to the show, Andrew, as a person maybe trying to get a job or thinking switching gears, changing careers, what are some of the things they should know about today's kind of way to get connected and way to get your resume or way to get yourself noticed?
Okay, well, that's a lot, but let me back up and say you made a good point. They did a study a number of years ago, and it was something like just under 90% of the people they interviewed or polled were open to their next gig, which means, even though I'm not actively looking, I'm open, It's we talked earlier, Wayne Dyer, I'm open to everything, but
attached to nothing.
Well, but it's a good point, right? So. And the other thing that I liked about what you said is it's an important distinction. There's active. One of the first things I tell people is empathy. In other words, I know all about being a job seeker and a candidate and how hard it is, but conversely, what's it like to be an employer? How do they approach it?
Okay.
And that's what I try to tell people. Consider what an employer has to do. Are they a hunter or are they a gatherer? Are they posting and praying, or are you praying and spraying with your resume? It's a really interesting dance, but I think just to answer the primary point of your question is networking.
All right.
Always put yourself out there. It's a lot more than just posting your resume online and hoping a recruiter will do the work for you, or submitting your resume online and hoping to hear back from people. A warm introduction to HR is far more likely to get addressed or treated favorably than just a post and pray kind of thing.
So with all the technology, and there's been some good stuff, LinkedIn, it's well documented what they're doing, the amazing things that they're able to achieve and offer products and programs. And I would agree with you. So it really comes down to, even this day and age, getting the word out, maybe networking, getting your resume, or letting a friend, coworker, family member, someone that might be connected to someone else, to really let them know what you're looking for maybe.
Well, so that's another good point. All companies have an employee referral program, ERP, where they're looking to good people know good people. It's a very common thing. But one of the things I always tell people when I'm coaching them up on trying to get a new job or put themselves out there is the best job to apply for is the one that doesn't exist because there's no competition, right? So it's a little bit of beginning with the end in mind. Figure out where you want to go, and don't concern yourself too much with how you're going to get there.
Okay.
But for example, I don't want to tell this whole long story, but I wanted to be in radio when I was, so I thought, okay, how am I going to do that? So I wrote this is back in the day, KOME, KSJ. And so I wrote all the radio stations, and so I thought the best way for me, I was a nobody, but I could sell. So I wrote all the radio stations, and I said, hey, I want to sell, and I can sell. What's it going to take for me to come in? I wrote all the station managers, and I got a couple of 3 job offers. And the reason I tell that story is, here again, there is no competition. It was pretty compelling. If someone reached out to you, Joe, and said, hey, Joe, I want to work for Bundle Select. And I know all about real estate. I'm not afraid of the phone. What's it going to take? That person's really going to stand.
That's a very good point.
And unfortunately, we talked earlier about one of my personal passions, is helping the military transition from military to the civilian workforce, and they don't know how to advocate for themselves. And candidly, a lot of them, even my kids, wrestle. Advocating for yourself isn't something that we're really good at typically.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's something you do need to be good at in a job market where you're really trying to put yourself out there and attract attention.
That's great. So networking. And I love what you said, too, about, begin with the end in mind, because really, especially if you're always kind of looking, or if you're a person in that mode, yeah, I like what I'm doing, but, I'd really like to do this. Why not take some shots at that right now, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah. What I tell people are 3 things. Are you good at it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Can you get paid? And, by the way, if you enjoy it and you're good at it, it's just a matter of time before you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
And so, but I do, as you know, I'm a big believer in having an intention, having a goal. If if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And if you keep headed where you're going, you are going to get there. So,
what are some of the biggest struggles that companies face these days? Let's just call it in the Bay Area. I know it's probably similar all over the United States, but this is where we are, and you're more familiar with a lot of the people in this industry in the Bay Area. What are some of the biggest challenges, other than maybe just the competitive nature of this marketplace?
Well, so that's a great point. Everyone's looking for the same people.
Yeah, okay.
Depending upon who we ask, some would argue, oh gosh, our employer brand. The candidates don't know who we are, or candidate experience. How do people feel about our company once they've engaged with our application process? But I think the biggest challenge that all of employers are facing is they're trying to commoditize the hiring process. They're trying to economize it, make it shorter, make it faster, make it better, using artificial intelligence and machine learning and shortening the cycles. And I have mixed emotions about that, Joe, because it's it's human resources, not computer resources, and sometimes you throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that's really what employers are trying to do. The other thing, and you and I have talked about this, is with LinkedIn and the advent of social media and the interconnect, we're all connected to everybody. So I don't need more connection if I'm an employer. I need better connection and, frankly, less connection with better people.
Yeah, that brings up a good point, and I'll ask you to elaborate a little bit on that, Andrew, and that is the use of AI. And again, we live in this world of technology, and everybody wants things quicker, faster, simpler, cheaper. We get all that. But in the area of this human resources or hiring, I could look back, and again, I've been blessed and fortunate that I've kind of paved my own path, so to speak. I haven't been in a situation where I've been out looking for jobs. But it doesn't matter what capacity or what position or what title. There is something when you submit or when you're interested in a job, and to hear back from someone that seems sincere and seems like they care about you, there is something to that, isn't it? Even today, I don't care, with all the technology.
No.
Don't you think?
I know. I don't think. For example, imagine if you're Starbucks. And Starbucks, and I'm not picking on Starbucks, but any company that has a huge need, a perpetual, ongoing need of hiring, and someone has a bad experience. So I submit my resume to Starbucks. I don't hear back. My feelings are hurt. Whereas conversely, I do apply to Starbucks. They give me a great candidate experience. Maybe it doesn't. By the way, sometimes no is God's ultimate protection. So I just want to reinforce that, anyways, the point I was going to make is Starbucks, it's a very subtle dance. In other words, you can't work here, but you need to buy our coffee, right? So that's a really good observation on your point. Candidate experience is a very sensitive, relevant topic, because there's this big black hole that exists for some people when I sit at my computer and I send out my resume to 20 companies, and 15 of them don't reply back to me, and the 5 that did, 3 of them were form letters, and they got my name spelled wrong. It's kind of like, wow, and it's a real blow to some people's ego, right? I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. And when I send out this stuff and I don't get the response that I want, between me, the negative experience about me and or the company, it's not helpful. It's not productive. So,
yeah, I mean, first impressions. And so the question is kind of interesting, and I guess we'll find out in many different ways. Are you able to make a first impression with the use of technology? I guess you can, but it's a different type of impression.
Okay. Well, so check this out. So some companies, now I'm dating myself, and you'll appreciate this. It used to be, when I started my recruitment ad agency and BA job, most of the sourcing was done through resumes and mailing the resumes.
Right.
People were putting print ads in the Chronicle, and you're submitting a resume. And fast forward to now, and people are you can apply to 40 jobs in like 6 seconds. It's amazing. Anyway, we could talk a lot about that whole exchange, but I think so what was I going to say? A lot of times you're talking to a robot and you don't even know it, or you're engaging. I was on a panel, I guess last year, and they had the moderator was a computer.
Really?
And
interesting.
It was interesting, and not everybody knew it. So
interesting.
It's not undoable, but I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's such a personal thing, and all jobs are relevant, right? The ability to earn a living here in the Bay Area is not insignificant, and I think it should be treated accordingly. And sometimes I think this business of economizing the process and making it shorter and faster and taking out the human element is a mistake.
Yeah, so do you think, that was going to be my next question, so you do think it is still a smart, equitable balance when a company says, okay, we're going to make the best use of technology, but at the same time, in a industry or in a department like this where it's a high-touch situation where we still want people to care about what we think of them, it would seem like you better do both pretty well.
Yeah, so exactly. And I will also say that it's a spectrum. There are some positions that require an executive search firm where the position is so vital.
That's
it's critical
to
the success of my company. There's nothing computerized about it. It's a person making phone calls to people that they know personally and saying, hey, Joe, would you be willing to talk to so-and-so about this job? Or all the way down to, hey, we just need baristas that are willing to cover the night shift for all the holidays and weekends for the next 20 years.
Well, that's another good point. We could talk for hours about this, but the executive recruit function, so is what you're saying is that they do a better job of that human touch because they almost have to because of the type of people they're looking for? I mean, we don't want to minimize any job because everybody, what they do means something. It means something to them and who they're working for, but how different is that approach with executive recruiting versus your typical generic, if you will, HR hiring function?
Well, it's very different, and I think about it. So I am going to hire a C-suite or a VP level position that's responsible, let's just say in this case, for the sales of my company. And it's a very aggressive international company that wants to grow by leaps and bounds. That person isn't looking.
That's a good point.
And if they are looking, they're probably not looking very hard. They're probably gainfully employed. And that's kind of back to what I do for a living that is so valuable is I help employers. How am I going to engage and nurture contact with someone that is, for all intents and purposes, happily employed, has no intention of changing, is stock options and golden handcuffs? They're not going to respond to an email.
Right.
They might respond to a call from a very dear friend that's in executive search that they went to high school or college with. That's about the only way they're going to respond. So,
yeah, good point. Let's talk a little bit about the services. You just talked a little bit of what are some of the things that people are hiring you for and they need the use for? I mean, your talents, you do a lot of stuff different. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. As someone's listening to this show, what are some of the things that companies are looking to someone with your level of expertise and your skill set to help them with?
So the best way to describe what I do is we come in and we do, I like the medical analogies. So let's presume I'm a job doctor or an employment doctor. I'll come into a company and I'll do an examination. I'll do an assessment.
An audit of, so to speak?
How old are you? How tall are you? How much do you weigh? As many statistics as I can get. So metaphorically, how big is your company? What types of positions are you hiring for? What did you do last year? What do you want to do this year? What's in place right now? So very thorough, exhaustive. What's your employment brand? What's the experience like? Do kind of an audit.
Okay.
And then I factor in, or we factor in, it's not just me. Okay, what are your goals and objectives? Like, where do you want to be 6 months from now, a year from now, 18 months from now? So not just talent and time, but what are your long-range goals? And then we kind of come back to them and say, okay, here's what you should start doing, here's what you should stop doing, and here's what you should keep doing. And with a couple of caveats. One is it's a process. It's not an event. And secondly, it needs to be nimble because everything shifts. Everything is constantly evolving and changing. And I think that's another one of the real values or benefits of working with my company or with Donnie and me. And Mom, if you're listening, sometimes they'll say Donnie and or me and Donnie just to get her to say, are you being Donnie and I? Oh, are you working with Donnie too, Mom? We kind of know where all the dead bodies are buried, right?
Yeah.
We know who's doing what worked where, what the price points are with some of the different platforms. Are you a hunter? Are you a gatherer? Where can we add value? Where can we shore up what you're doing well? Where can we? And I think a couple of you asked earlier, what are some of the key things? One of the biggest things that companies are starting to figure out is who's coming from where. It used to be, hey, they're all just coming in and we're hiring people. It's a big push. Now it's like, well, did they come from Glassdoor? Did they come from Indeed? Did they come from ZipRecruiter? Was it internal referral? Who came from where? And not just like best guess or they tell us. It's like with impunity. And that's a very powerful thing because we help employers eliminate the stuff that's not working.
Okay.
There's a lot of really simple kind of best practice blocking and tackling that you can do without spending a lot of time and money on this extravagant kind of woo-woo, way far out futuristic stuff that companies get away from and they kind of ignore. There's so much talent here in Silicon Valley. Anyway, so that's what we do.
Okay. I mean, I would think, I'm just going to assume when you hear this stuff, so if you're in HR or talent acquisition for a Google or a Facebook or an Amazon or, whatever the biggest, hottest kind of companies need to, I'm assuming that just because people are assuming that's the company, high profile, the brand name, all that, we're assuming that those are some tractions there. But what is it like for all the other companies? I hear this from time to time. Because I do hear that from time to time.
I hear it too. I live it. It's so funny. Oh, Google. If Google's doing it, it must be amazing.
Right.
Well, you know what? Not really. So what Google, listen, and I'm not picking on Google or Facebook.
No, I hear you.
Lyft but a lot of these companies have figured out, hey, we'll have an on-site cafeteria with all the jelly beans you can eat and beanbag chairs and zip scooters, and get these people to live on our campus. And their hiring practices support that infrastructure. But while that may work at Facebook or Google, it won't transfer to a Roche or a Franklin Resources.
Yeah, right.
It's all about company culture, mindset, and alignment. And again, I'm never not amazed. I love double negatives at when someone goes and has a cup of coffee at Google and then goes somewhere else, and people think, oh my God, this person was at Facebook. They must know everything. And they don't. And so it's a double-edged sword. Everybody wants to work in recruiting at Facebook and Google, so they're constantly churning out. And there's it's not hard and fast. I don't want to be indiscriminate. There are some advances, but it's not. Every hiring situation is different. Every culture is different. And it's all about fit. You hear so much about the hard skills, Joe, but what about the soft skills? What about the, religion or politics or age, ethnicity? There's a lot of little subtle stuff that doesn't get addressed that needs to be addressed, and not in a formal way, just in we talked earlier about there's a huge cost of a bad hire. And I mean, the higher up the ladder you go, the more expensive it can be. So there is some, I'm going to, kind of contradict myself here. There is some value and benefit about capturing all this data, who came from where, were they a good hire, and how do you evaluate a good hire? It's not just did we hire them, it's did they last? And if they did last, how long did they last? And what were the contributions? How did they materially affect the success of the company? And keeping all that data and then replicating it and building it in, modifying the job description so you're constantly upping your game.
We got a couple more minutes. One of the things, I watch, we've probably talked about it several times, but I watch these TED Talks all the time. They're wonderful, aren't they? So many different topics and subjects. One that stuck in my mind of several, but one was the silver spoon versus the scrapper. I don't know if you saw that. So the whole idea was they called it this is within a year, the new kind of hiring spectrum or look the way HR is looking at. So the silver spoon is the person who went to Harvard or Yale, never had a real job, but man, when you look at their resume, because of the schools they went, the education they have, the intellect, the grades, all that stuff, they looked like to be a good fit. And then there was the scrapper, they called it.
I like that.
The scrapper was the person who still went to college, got, C's, B's, but they had jobs, real jobs, like they worked in car washes and they helped people build their home and they worked with people in businesses and they did internships. And so along the way, they may not have had the scholastical part or the Ivy schools, but they had that fight in them, like understanding every job they had, they learned something, they gained something, and they grew in it. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy when you think about it that way. Anyway, the premise behind this TED Talk was that they said more and more companies, unlike years past, they're now looking at the scrappers just as much, if not more, than they're looking at the silver spoons.
I didn't see the TED Talk, but I would have ostensibly given that TED Talk. I'm a firm believer. My father, thank God, because I didn't get to go to an Ivy League school. It's not the school that makes the man,
right.
In this case, the person. I'm a big believer in the scrapper. And in fact, you said at the outset of the show, I've been so lucky. I don't think, Joe, the harder I try, the luckier I get.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah.
Luck shines on those people that prepare themselves for it. I'm a big believer in effort and putting yourself out there. Now, that's not to say that an Ivy League education and some of the advantages you mentioned wouldn't, be a welcome addition to my skills, but the best indication of future performance is past performance. And I think, I don't know, Joe, I never learned anything when stuff was given to me. When the harder I had to work for it, and the harder the lesson, the bigger the benefit.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go, if anyone's interested, they want to reach out to you for help, support anyone in this topic or this benefit area of all, how would they reach you? You
can reach me, Andrew, at The Hierarchy, TheHierarkey. If you say it real fast, it sounds like hierarchy. Andrew at thehierarchy.com, and then just on LinkedIn, Andrew Gardiner, Gardiner.
Very good.
Thank you. And by the way, just before we end, so I'm very interested and I love the format of the show. Just excellent and very. Thank you. Well, thank you, frankly. But so are you on YouTube as well? So our shows are on YouTube. Mainly, the way to do is to download the podcast, but the YouTube part of, unfortunately. So that's a great question. So we do the live feed on Facebook for the benefit of get the additional exposure and get people to watch and grow the audience on the live feed with Facebook. Okay. But once this show's done, it's an audio file. So then it goes to the podcast. So that would not reside on YouTube. But some of the videos and stuff that we do. Well, if I want to subscribe to the show and I wanted to hear it live, does Facebook kick out a hey, Joe's about to light up? Or they do. Work? So if you go subscribe to Facebook, go to Facebook and then just like Real Estate Radio Live, and that way you'll get the feed anytime it's getting ready to come up. But then also what you want to do is go download, subscribe to the podcast. Really, that's where you could follow us and then listen and download the podcast at your leisure. And then, forgive me, I'm genuinely interested. What about Patreon? Is that something you're fooling with? For what? Patreon. Forgive me, but I think this is a good metaphor. Yeah. I think Patreon is to YouTube what MySpace. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean. Really? Someone needs to. I have to look into that, Grant. I see your producer over there typing like a banshee. Starting to work around her. Have you heard of Patreon, Grant? Oh, yeah, no, we're going to have to look into that. Sharpen our pencil. And then also, have you ever done a live kind of Q&A, like Google Hangout Live? I watch a ton of we haven't done one of those. I used to do live radio shows, but not like the Google Live stuff. That's interesting. What? That would be, because then one of the things I've noticed, you can comment, you can ask questions. I mean, even in a podcast format. But if someone has a question, they can call in or they can do it live. You've got Grant over there. Sharp as a tack. I think it's something that I've noticed. I was just curious if you do that, because But one of the first things I do is I'm gonna go join your Facebook.
Well, there we go. That's what we learn something every day. Isn't that the key?
Well, I hope I'm not talking out of school, but
no, it's all good.
A logical progression for you.
Yeah, we need to look into that for sure.
Okay.
Well, Andrew Gardiner, thank you very much. Appreciate the help, and this is a great show. A lot of good information. Again, one more time, if people want to contact you, LinkedIn, of course, but then what's the email?
Andrew at thehigherkey.com.
At thehigherkey.com. All right, very good. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
This is Joe Kuchera of the Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you again for those tuning in, and thank you for those that continue to watch us on the live feed on Facebook. We appreciate that very much. Until next time, take care. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.